thoughtful ideas, suggestions for guests and topics.
Great events, programs, and
Welcome to this week's segment of Dialogue Houston. This is a very special edition, as we do every week, featuring our friends at the Houston Public Library. A very special segment called Living in New Knowledge. And why Living in New Knowledge? Because this wonderful card called the Link card, which is a library card, L-I-N-K, stands for Living in New Knowledge for the segment of this show of Dialogue Houston. Every week we feature different opportunities for you to understand how the library works in partnership with our great community leaders. In this case will be the League of Women Voters, which we'll feature in a moment. But the Houston Public Library has been serving our citizens since 1909. It is truly your link to the world. As I mentioned, you can have access to everything at the library, which is free, by getting your library card. If you do not have one, you may do so by going to www.houstonlibrary.org. or calling 832-393-1313, and we'll be happy to set you up. All you'll need is the library card, your link card, and your PIN number, and you're set to go. It is a wonderful way to access all kinds of things, and I'll have to admit you'll be surprised at the things you can access through your public library, along with just having your link card, your public library card. So in the segment of Living in New Knowledge, we're featuring in conjunction with the Houston Public Library. And we want to thank, as always, our friends from the International Services Group for helping to set all this up every week. We are going to be looking at a very important aspect and so timely. It is almost just waiting for us to do the right thing by the right people for the right reason, and that is voting.
Voting.
To help us understand what we're facing and what is in front of us. And I'm choosing my words so carefully here, is our good friend, Dr. Annie Johnson Benifield, who is the Vice President of Voter Services for the wonderful League of Women Voters Houston. Welcome, Dr. Benifield.
Thank you so much, Larry.
Let's just jump into this. You know, this is a time, for such a time as this, if there ever was one, this is it. So let's just explain to some of our viewers, explain the mission of the League of Women Voters.
Well, you know, the League of Women Voters came out of the suffragist movement, and the organization was formed during the suffragist struggle to get the right to vote for women in terms of the 19th Amendment. And this year, celebrating 100 years of that, this is pretty monumental, 100 years that the League has existed in conjunction with the 19th Amendment, celebrating its centennial as well. So that is in part. So one of the things that the League's mission is to empower people and defend democracy. And one of the things that happened once women got the right to vote, one of the critical features is to ensure that citizens had active information that would help them in facilitating making the best choice in terms of participating in the political process by voting. So that was the mission in terms of the League of Women Voters, to ensure that people had nonpartisan, accurate information to make informed decisions. And we've persisted in the 100+ years that we've existed in terms of fulfilling that particular mission.
And you truly have persisted and done a great job of the work that you've done. Let's just go back a little bit before we go forward. Yes, the wonderful 19th Amendment, the Voting Rights Act for women, but we know that women of color were not included in this wonderful amendment.
Unfortunately, they were not. Women were of color.
Right, and it took many, many more years and many, many years of struggle to get that inclusion to happen. And we can name all the great names of African-American women who helped make that happen, from Ida B. Wells to the list goes on and on and on. But in the 21st century, in 2020, it is really this amalgamation of women of all the ethnic groups, of all backgrounds, who have really come together and say very strongly this year that basically enough is enough. I see the women's movement, I see the League, I see all these things coming together now. And so this is really a great time for the celebration of the 100th anniversary, but also to talk about what's ahead of us. Speak to that a little bit about what's this next phase look like.
there are several things that happen in terms of wearing my political science hat, since I teach government and politics at Lone
Right.
Star College, Tomball. I need to say that women have been determining the outcome in electoral politics for quite some time. Women turn out at a greater level in terms of participating in the political process, and it's often women vote that decide who actually get elected to office. So women are a powerful group in terms of the political process. And politics is about power, who owns it, who controls it, and who gets to utilize it.
So this movement of getting informed, get registered, get voting, engage youth and community as a whole, y'all are taking great strides as a league to make sure that happens. So if anybody wants to get registered, let's talk about how to do that. And we've made it very simple now. There's no reason not to register or to vote. Is there? Is there? I mean,
well, Texas is still one of the states that you can't go online and simply register.
Right.
You can go online and request a voter registration form to be sent to you, but you cannot go online and fill it out, as in so many states, in 30 plus states, you can go online and actually fill out the form and register to vote. So there's still a barrier, because in terms of having access to computer technology, being able to go online, you fill out the form, you have to print it out, you have to put it in an envelope and mail it. So that could be impactful in that process in terms of people who have less resources.
but there will be opportunities all around towns where people are stationed who have been deputized as voter register to register people to vote. Will there not be?
Yes, we do. Actually, the league is planning, because of COVID, it kind of put a lot of things on hold, because we did registration at the naturalization ceremonies until they were suspended, where we registered 85 to 90% of the people who were sworn in as new citizens. So with COVID, that kind of caused that process to actually dissipate. We are planning a big event, and I plan to reach out to Dr. Wallace and see if the University of Houston downtown will help provide us with spacing to do that. On National Voter Registration Day, over 600 places around the country are actually having National Voter Registration Day on September 22nd, where we will have deputy registered voters. Here in the Houston area, we are doing drive-through voter registration. The League of Women Voters Houston has reached out to the League of Women Voters in Montgomery County, in Fort Bend County, in Bay Area, in Cy-Fair. We've reached out to those leagues in terms of having a conglomerate effort of everybody having boots on the ground that day to do drive-through registration to minimize contact. And so part of that, in terms of doing that, we've been looking for large facilities. We're going to issue PPE, protective gear. KPRC is partnering with us in terms of marketing and advertising to get the word out, and also to advertise and go to the locations and actually report back from the location what kind of fanfare. So we're reaching out not just to the League of Women Voters, but to other groups who are interested in voter registration, because this could be a big effort in terms of minimizing contact. Because apparently with COVID, we want to minimize contact. We're issuing all of our volunteers. So far, we've had 140 volunteers to come forward and say, we're prepared, we're ready to go, we want to be boots on the ground. So we're reaching out to different institutional structures in the broader community so we can have places for people to go and register to do the drive-through. Just like the Houston Food Bank and other places do drive-through food pickup, we do drive-through voter registration where we'll be able to hand them the voter registration card and or have them to see our QR code, and they can just scan it with their phone, and they can go online and fill out the form, and we will actually mail them a voter registration card, and the voter registration cards are post-paid. So the only thing you do is once you get it, fill it out and drop it in the mail. And in 4 to 6 weeks, normally you get a return card duly authorizing you, saying you're registered to vote.
All right, you've explained that process very well. It's more complicated than most people think. What should every potential voter know before they enter into elections and voting? It sounds simple, but this is an area where you really have to educate yourself to what is fact and what is fiction, what is reality and what is not. And so it becomes really incumbent upon the potential voter, which means all voters, there should be no such thing as a potential voter, to educate themselves really before they get ready to exercise that most important thing they do as a human being on this face of the earth, which is vote. So how do we educate ourselves?
And that's the part that the League of Women Voters says it just after women got suffrage, they said to educate voters. So one of the things that we've been doing for years is the voter's guide. So before you check your registration, go online to Harris Vote if you live in Harris County, Vote 411, and find out if you're duly registered to vote. Then go online, find out, go to the voter's guide, put in your address information to find out what's on the ballot for your particular area. Then you pull up the information and you can look at the candidate's response. All of the candidates, we only include their exact wording. We don't change it, we don't edit it, we don't modify it. If there are spelling errors, it goes as it is. We allow, because the idea, if you change something, people could say you altered their words, even if you were taking corrective action. So you can actually pull up the ballot and notice on the ballot for your area. You can print it out if you have a printer, and you can take it with you to the polling location. They cannot preclude you from bringing in information like that. They will preclude you from using your phone, though. If you think you want to use your phone, they can preclude you using an electronic device. And that voting is made this year. This is so essential this year. October 5th is the deadline day to register. The last day that you can register to vote is October 5th. Early voting will start October 13th and go through October 30th. So there's a 17-day window in terms of early voting that you can actually engage in, that you could actually go vote. And there'll be numerous, from talking to Harris County, from what I understand, there'll be at least 120 polling places available doing early voting. If you vote by mail, the state of Texas has two things. Vote by mail, 65 years old, you can automatically, without questions asked. And the other, supposedly, if you have a physical, if you have some form of disability. You don't have to tell them what the form of disability is, but Harris County has gone an extra steps, and some people are a little bit concerned about vote by mail, because they've heard quite a few stories on the news about the post office. So Harris County is going to have numerous locations where you could go by and drop off your ballot, that you've gotten a ballot to vote by mail. You can drop it off at those locations. So I think they say they're going to be 12 or 13 places like that, in order to facilitate and make you feel more secure. Because on our website, the League of Women Voters website, we're increasingly getting inquiries from individuals who are concerned that their vote may not arrive in time once they vote by mail, that because they send the postal service. So they're a little bit concerned about that. So we are reassuring them that in Harris County in particular, they will have stations where you could go and drop off your ballot. And so you won't have to worry about actually mailing it. They'll have drop-off points.
And if you're able and you're not worried, concerned is a better word with COVID-19, the early voting period is really the time to do it. You have 17 days. 17 days, 120 different locations. Vote early.
And it's a good idea. Go ahead.
No, you go.
It's a good idea to develop a plan to decide which day you're going to go vote. This is the day I plan to go vote, if it's during the early voting time period, and pick that day and then go. Probably early morning might not be the best time, but mid-morning might be a better time, just in case people are stopping off on their way to work to vote. You will miss that crowd and then go like mid-morning, like maybe 10 o'clock. You want to miss the lunch hour flow just in case people are voting. Harris County had something that you could actually text and get a response back for a green light, yellow light, red light in terms of going to a polling place in Harris County. I wasn't sure they had that available in any of the other counties, but they definitely had it in Harris County. In the 2019 election, they had that available, that you could text and find out whether the polling place you plan to go was very busy, or they could tell you where the closest polling place. From what I understand, they're going to have at least 800 polling places open on election day.
Well, this has been a lot of great information. Let me just loop back quickly to the voter's guide, the voter's guide, the voter's guide. If you haven't seen one, you haven't used one online, or you can pick up copies at any Houston Public Library. They're all over town in different locations, are they not?
Well, one of the things that's happening this year with COVID and the Houston Public Libraries, and they can better explain, Carmen can better explain that to you, since they're closed, then drive-by, curbside pickup. They have curbside pickup. Yep. So, and the voter's guide will be in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Chinese. It'll be interactive online. So probably most of the people who will come to the library for curbside pickup because they've gone online and requested what books they want, it will probably be to their advantage to actually access the voter guide online because you're already online for curbside, so not needing necessarily a hard copy. And you could always download it and print it out, but lots and lots of pages. But it will be in those 4 languages. We're going to print a limited number of voter guides this year because we didn't want to print 40,000 like we did in 2019 and have no place for them to go.
Well, as one lady told me already at one of our branch libraries, would somebody please put a voter's guide in her little bag when she stops her drive-by pickup for her books? Because she's old-fashioned and she's old enough and she
wants
likes the idea of the voter's guide in her hand to be able to have access. So again, I think in the world of the way we are, things are not either or, they're always both and.
Yes.
And so we try to accommodate as best we can. Dr. Benefield, we're out of time, so I have to take
I understand. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
But this has been so great, and you've been such a wealth of information about this whole process of voting. We want to thank you very much and thank the League for all the great work y'all do.
Okay, thank you.
We'll probably talk to you again.
Okay, bye-bye.
After the election, maybe, to see how things went.
Okay, I'd appreciate that. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you very much. We are going to be joined by our good friend from the Houston Public Library, Carmen Pena Abrego, who is the Adult Service Manager at the Houston Public Library. We're going to talk about the great work that the library is doing in a whole myriad of things, and particularly around even this 19th Amendment and the suffrage movement here, the 100th anniversary. Please stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
A natural disaster may force you to evacuate, and the coronavirus could impact your emergency plans. So take steps now to help your family and community prepare. Keep a supply kit stocked with cloth face coverings, disinfecting supplies, and hand sanitizers. Check with local officials about what shelter spaces will be open during quarantine efforts. And remember to review the CDC's guidelines with the whole family. Disasters won't wait. Neither should you. Visit ready.gov/plan to make a plan today.
Houston Community College is safe, clean, and open for learning. We're sanitizing our classrooms and reducing class sizes so you can feel good when you come back. Register now at hccs.edu/college your way.
Welcome back to this week's segment of Dialogue Houston. If you've been with us for the first part of the show, you know we had a fascinating conversation with our good friends from the League of Women Voters, Dr. Benifield, with all things about voter registration and how to vote in this upcoming election. We partner with the League of Women Voters at the Houston Public Library, and our next guest is responsible for all those kind of ongoing working relationships, and she is none other than Carmen Pena Abrego, the Adult Service Manager at the Houston Public Library. And welcome, Carmen. So great to have you here.
Thank you, Larry. It's so nice to join you today.
Well, let's talk about how this all fits together and the great work you've been doing around this whole 100 years, women's participation, the suffragette thing, the book clubs. You've got a lot going on, but it's all related and connected in its own way. So tell us a little bit about all of that.
Yes, actually, the League of Women Voters and the University of Houston Friends of Women's Studies. Houston Public Library, we put together a very exciting Suffrage Centennial Book Club it's a book list, a reading list, and it also includes complimentary film pairings that we suggested for each of the titles for a year's worth of reading this year in honor of and in commemorating, I should say, the Suffrage Centennial.
And this Suffrage Centennial is really coming up in a great way because you've got some great activities coming up that relates to all of this. Tell us about those.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I mentioned that there are, there's a selection of titles and they're quite diverse, Larry. It was very important that in identifying and selecting these titles, one for each month for this year, that they represented, they definitely speak to the fact that the suffrage movement was not perfect, and there were a lot of voices that were left out of that. And so if you look at the list, it's very much, it looks at and examines the different voices, the contributions of African-American women and Tejanas who worked alongside each other to, they were left out somewhat of that process, but they were right there, also suffragists. So they are very much highlighted, I should say, in all of the books and the films. And so speaking to that, what we have coming up next in terms of programming that is part of the Suffrage Centennial is the Houston Public Library is having, working with the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, the Houston Cinema Art Society, and of course, Friends of Women's Studies. And there will be a live streaming film discussion taking place this Thursday on August 27th at 6:30 p.m. And the film discussion is on Shirley Chisholm. So it's very exciting. The documentary about her life and what she did was Shirley Chisholm 72, Unbought and Unbossed. And the director of that film is Shola Lynch. And she will be joining Jessica Green, the artistic director for the Houston Cinema Art Society. So they will be in conversation with each other to discuss the life of Shirley Chisholm. So that's one program that's coming up next as part of this program.
Well, let's quickly a little history note, because I think it's a very important one to share. That we talked about book clubs earlier. A book club helped start the Houston Public Library.
Right.
It was a group of women who had a book club in civic discourse and here in Houston called the Ladies Reading Room Group that really paved the way for the foundation of the start of the Houston Public Library, was it not?
Absolutely, that's very much true. So pre-suffrage, women were gathering together and having, civic clubs, and some of these clubs were definitely about discussing books and topics of the time, and suffrage and that women wanted to gain that right to vote was definitely something that you could imagine they were talking about when they were gathering in these clubs pre-suffrage. So absolutely, and also very much true that the Houston Public Library exists today because women were gathering like that.
So what do you see in the little time we have left, what do you see as the next future steps of iteration, perhaps a little bit going into the fall and maybe into the new year, if you can crystal ball can go that far, of some of the things coming down the road that we can perhaps expect?
So I definitely want to direct everyone to the Houston Public Library website. If you go to houstonlibrary.org, and I believe it's /centennial, then you can actually see the listing. I mean, we have little cards here. I know it's difficult to see that on camera, but if you want to see which titles and which films are part of this list, you can go there to our website. And, of course, with your Houston Public Library card, you can also check out these books. That's one way to do it. A lot of the films are also available on a streaming service called Canopy. And again, with your Houston Public Library MyLink card, you have access to Canopy and, of course, to our collection that includes these titles that are highlighted as part of the Suffrage Centennial reading list or book club list.
So we're going to be talking with other aspects of HPL going forward in different areas and system-wide programming, et cetera, to look at some of the things. But this adult services division that you run is the programming arm, really, of a lot that happens within HPL. And you and your team have all been very, very creative in doing those things and looking at timely subject matters, as we're doing here with the women's suffragette and 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. And going forward, there's some key other dates, I think, that you kind of mentioned in passing, just quickly, that you may want to talk about that we're going to focus on with some programs.
So as part of the Suffrage Centennial programming, I can say that looking to September, there will also be an opportunity to join a conversation with one of the authors. Her name is Cynthia Orozco, and she wrote a book on, I'm going to refer to my club list here. It's called The Agent of Change. She'll speak about this particular title on the life of Adela Slas Vento, a Mexican-American civil rights activist and a Texas feminist. So that will take place in September. And if you actually go to our website, that's where information or event details can be found. So that's something that we can very much look forward to in September. That's part of the Suffrage Centennial. And then, we will absolutely, Larry, be excited to host other types of film discussions. You yourself will be helping to be part of and facilitate discussion on a program that's coming up this Wednesday. And it's not around the Suffrage Centennial programming, but it's still very much related because it's on the life of John Lewis, and specifically the documentary on his life, Good Trouble. And so this Wednesday, that's taking place, and you just need to register to participate. So we're very much looking forward to that one as well. And thank you, Larry, for always being available that way.
Well, thank you, Carmen. Listen, we're out of time, so we're going to have to leave it at that for now. I want to make sure you had a chance to get everything in. Let me, in the closing remarks here, make a special thank you to International Services Department, to Helen and Anna for helping out with this wonderful series, Living in New Knowledge, this very special edition of HPL. I'm doing a lot of work with HPDs these days. So HPL, to bring this show to you and make it possible. In closing comments, it really is in the era of George Floyd and the passing of John Lewis, in the opportunities afforded us in the upcoming fall season to be actively engaged as a citizen, to understand what citizenship means, living in a democracy, and to make sure that we ensure that our democracy remains in place. Remember John Lewis's famous quote, that his worst nightmare is to wake up one morning and have his democracy be gone. And so I close with this quote from John Lewis. We all should know it by heart by now. Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is a struggle of a lifetime. Never, never, ever be afraid to make some noise and to get in good trouble, necessary trouble, going forward. I think that's where we are now, and that's where we're going to be until change, systemic change, eradication around a lot of these issues we've been talking about actually happen. Not just the words, but the action and the policy changes necessary to achieve those goals. Until we come together again with Dialogue Houston in the future weeks, I want to thank you for being part of this wonderful discussion and dialogue as always. We look forward to you joining us. Until then, as always, be safe, be well, and peace, power, and love to you.